Happy Monday, 1-0, and it is a happy Monday today. It's a band, isn't it, actually? It was a band, indie band from the 90s. Anyway, we digress again, as usual. I do believe it's a happy Monday today, actually, because it is really, really good weekend for West Ham. And in many respects, there might even be a cherry on the top of a good weekend for West Ham. Because I don't know whether it's just a load of rumours rumbling after the protest, which we'll talk about in just a second. But there is a rumour going round that Karren Brady could be on her way out of West Ham. Now, that's what we're going to deal with primarily in this video. But to give it a little bit of context, I want to talk about the march on Saturday, just before the game, because, well, it was brilliant. I thought it was a real show of strength from West Ham and from West Ham fans. Impeccably observed, by the way. It was really noticeable. Because you can't just do that stuff. You can't just march through the streets. It started off at the station, went down the main drag in Stratford, up to Hanger Right, up past the Carpenters, and marched towards the stadium, basically. You can't do that stuff without letting the police know, for health and safety reasons, that you're going to do it. And all I can say is it was really impeccably observed throughout it, to the point where the police weren't nervous at all. I thought the police were really good. They help guide us on the way. But Hammers United had provided loads and loads of stewards in high-vis jackets. Those of them went along and actually picked up rubbish off the floor. Not that I felt that West Ham fans were making loads of rubbish. We just wanted to make sure that everything was done correctly. And it really, really was done, I thought, absolutely perfectly. And a few people said, well, I've said since then, and actually during the march, it actually felt like, do you know what it felt like? I actually felt like walking to a game at Upton Park, actually. It felt different. It felt a little bit old school. It felt a little bit old school West Ham. I loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I thought it put everybody in... There's a solemnness to it, and don't get me wrong, there was a hearse there, there was a coffin there to signify the death of West Ham and so on and so forth. So there was a solemn nature to it, but it was also optimistic. There was optimism there, and the optimism that actually we can claim our club back, we can impact change, and this is what I want to get to, really. A lot of people talking about different things on that march, talking about the West Ham ownership being very, very concerned about what was going on. And, everyone had a story, everyone had an opinion, everyone had a point of view. And obviously I did the video, day or two before the game, about Trip Smith flying over and him having talks. I won't repeat everything I said in that video, but Trip Smith, obviously a minor shareholder in West Ham, but he's a broker. He's a broker of big business deals. So him flying over on West Ham business was important. And so you had that. And then you had this rumour that was going around that maybe there was interest from Sullivan in Cardiff City, which is good news. Well, probably not good news for Cardiff City, but for West Ham fans, good news. So we're thinking, hold on, is something going on here? But one of the biggest rumours doing the rounds was that Karren Brady could be about to resign her executive position. Now, this is really, really important here, because the biggest demands that certainly when the FAB put in their vote of no confidence, which was, we want Sullivan and Brady. I promise you I'm not doing that on purpose. Sullivan and Brady to resign their executive positions. That's what we want. And the reason is, ideally, you want them out of the club. But everybody, I think, is realistic enough to know that they've got a lot of money invested in the club. They're not going to walk away. They're not going to walk away from, particularly in David Sullivan's case, hundreds of millions of pounds, right? Somebody's going to have to come in to buy those shares. So the thought that you can just say, look, get out of here and leave is unrealistic. So what's the next best thing? Well, actually, if you resign your executive your positions, you no longer make footballing decisions about the club. Business decisions, footballing decisions. You appoint somebody else. You appoint a chief executive to run the club. And then that chief executive then appoints a head of recruitment, a director of football. They revamp everything in the club. That's That's the second best thing, basically. And so that's what's being asked. Now, the rumours seem to be going around that Karren Brady might be very, very soon to be doing precisely that. Now, ultimately, I guess that's a good thing. But I am a little bit worried by this, that it might just be that she is the sacrificial lamb and actually that nothing changes. Because is she a problem? Yes. Is she the biggest problem? No. Because, let me run a scenario past you. Karren Brady resigns her executive position. She's no longer chief executive. In essence, she's fired. All right, she's used as a sacrificial lamb. You go, and then hopefully that will pacify the fans. And I'm a bit worried about that, because I'm a bit worried that nothing would change. Because what you would possibly see is a chief executive. One of two things happen in that sense. Chief executive comes in and he's either, well, he basically doesn't have much power because David Sullivan continues to have a stranglehold over transfers and basically everything that he likes to run and do it his way at the club. Or, almost as likely, we are not in a position to appoint anybody competent. Because if you're really good at this stuff, if what you are is very really good at, as a chief executive of a football club, you have a track record of being a really, really good administrator, a really good job of appointing like middle management and sorting your departments out. I think anybody like that is probably not going to want to come in and take this job. So they'll probably think, I don't want this. They're going to want full autonomy. To come in at West Ham, they're going to want to know that they have the power to implement their vision. I just don't think you're going to get that at West Ham. And this is why I think it's really, really important that if this does happen, it is a victory. Don't get me wrong. It's a victory, but it's a victory in one battle rather than the I don't want to use that word to follow that sentence up, but rather than the ongoing process of winning the club back. What I really liked, I think, about it was I liked the separation of Nuno Espirito Santo from this. Because what's best for West Ham is that we stay in the Premier League. I suspect if we went down, Sullivan would leave. I do suspect that. But I think it makes it very, very hard to bounce back. So the best scenario, in my opinion at least, is we stay in the Premier League and David Sullivan and Karren Brady go. That's the ultimate for me. And I think if one of them goes, we'd still have a fight on our hands for the other one. And that's where what I said the other day is really, really important about Trip Smith, about new investors coming in. This would be huge. It would be absolutely huge. There's definitely, I know this. As a fact, have I been in the room? No. But I've spoken to some people who I spoke to loads of people on Saturday, loads and loads of people. And some of the people I've spoken to in the last week they don't really get involved in West Ham gossip and stuff like that. They just don't. And you just hear that something is happening behind the scenes. I don't know what it is. That's the truth of the matter. It might be that. It might be that Brady's going. It might be that these talks are ongoing. I don't know. We're in a situation, like I said the other day, I don't want to put 2 and 2 together and come up with 6, because you get to a point where what you want to happen, your desire, your heart starts overruling your head, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I'm far less fussy now about... There was a point maybe a few years ago I'd be quite fussy about the owners that I want at West Ham. And don't get me wrong, I don't want bad owners. I don't want what happened at Birmingham with Carsten Young. I don't want that to happen to West Ham. Don't get me wrong. But it is hard at the moment to think that anybody could do a worse job, because almost every club in the Premier League, I would say with the exception of Wolves, I think is probably run better than West Ham. And yes, I do mean even someone like Burnley. I know we've just beaten them, but they've got such a small budget. They're such a small club. We are... If we get through this, and we get through it this season, because we've got some good players, and be because we got a good manager. Now, there might be some people that turn around and say, hold on a second, Sullivan is in charge when those players were bought and that good manager was appointed. It is luck more than judgment. This Nuno Espirito Santo wasn't David Sullivan's choice. David Sullivan's choice was Julian Lopetegui. And make no mistake about it, if Espirito Santo wasn't available at that time, we wouldn't have gone and paid compensation for Nottingham Forest for him. That's just the truth of the matter. Nuno Espirito Santo wasn't Karren Brady's choice. That was Graham Potter. And I think, there's no point. I don't want to do a video going through all the players who've done it before, who signed who, and all the rest of it. I just, you know what? I don't know. And at this point, it doesn't matter. What I do know is that we rely on luck rather than judgment for so much of what we do. You don't. When you look at Brighton, I will use them as an example because their recruitment, the way they do their recruitment, is so good. You don't feel that any one of their signings is a result of luck. They've not stumbled across a player. You just don't feel that that's the case. I mean, look, I'll use Bournemouth. I'll use Bournemouth for example because they got thumped at the weekend, right? But that won't. They're still a very, very slick club. They're still really well run. The appointment of Iraola was not luck. They didn't stumble upon him. They had an indexed knowledge of up-and-coming young coaches. And I dare say when he goes, which he will because he's that good, they'll choose another coach who at the moment West Ham won't have heard of. By the way, I don't want a new coach. I really like Nuno. I really, really like him. I want him to survive at West Ham. And that's why I said at the start of the video, it was a good Monday. It's a happy Monday. I like the manager. I like him. He seems to get it at West Ham. Which is more than could be said for the ownership, who, funny enough, don't get it at West Ham. So is Karren Brady on her way out? You're fired. Maybe. I hope so. But it has to be followed up. It really has to be followed up. And the whole point of... You don't need me to point this out to you, but I'm going to say it anyway. The point of the sacrificial lamb is that basically Brady is thrown under the bus, which keeps Sullivan safe. That cannot be the case because we will not get what we want. Because in the same way that I don't believe the club are switched on and know who the best up-and-coming coaches are in world football, which is why we always go for who's cheap and who's available, I don't believe we know who the best chief executives are. I don't believe we know who the best... I bet they don't know. I bet he doesn't know. Okay, I'm going to ditch Karren, and I don't know. I'm not pretending I know, by the way. But I'm going to ditch Karren, and I'm going to go and get that guy. And then that guy, that chief executive comes in, and then that chief executive, then he appoints Dan Ashworth, and Dan Ashworth then builds the recruitment. I just can't see it. I don't think they know who that guy is. The guy that sits above Dan Ashworth. I don't think they know who it is. I really, really don't. I don't think they've got a clue. So as it stands at the moment, again, we're relying on luck. And I've said it before. You know, we've had this whole thing about the agents. I think we're probably going to need them. I think we're going to need it. Nuno's preferred agent, George Mendes. I mean, he might be the biggest agent in world football. I don't know. I think we're going to need him if we're going to sign any players. But I'll tell you something else. That helps. Winning games helps. We'll talk about the position. I haven't spoken much about football in this one because I believe this is the thing. It's what I want to talk about at the moment. But, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm so delighted to look at that league table now and we don't look cut adrift. It doesn't look nice. It doesn't look pretty. But it could have been so much worse without those back-to-back wins. Hey, look, we've got a 2-week international break. We've got loads and loads of time to discuss that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Karren Brady. The rumour is Karren Brady soon to be leaving West Ham. You've got to do the "you're fired" thing. Write in the comments if you want. You're fired. That's good. That's good. But it would need to be followed by another "you're fired," or you're hired, and it would really need to be the right person.